Have you ever sat alone on a quiet night like this, wondering who truly changed the way we understand life? Not the names etched on golden plaques, not the figures celebrated in the spotlight of history, but a woman working silently in the shadows of a cold laboratory who laid the first stone for the greatest biological revolution of the 20th century. Her name was Rosalind Franklin. Picture this. Every time you read about gene editing, hear about vaccines saving millions of lives, or see science take another step forward in the fight against disease, you're touching her legacy. Yet paradoxically, the name Rosalind Franklin has all but faded from our collective memory. In the 1950s, as science buzzed with the race to decode DNA, the key to life itself, Rosalind was the pioneer, the one who saw the light before anyone else. But why, a genius with a razor-sharp mind and a devoted heart, was she cast into obscurity? Why do we only remember James Watson and Francis Crick, the Nobel laureates, while the woman behind the legendary X-ray image, Photo 51, was forgotten like a fleeting shadow? In a letter to her sister in 1953, Rosalind wrote, "Science is a battle, not against the world, but against ourselves, against prejudices, limitations, and the dreams we dare not pursue." Those words, like a sigh from the past, send shivers down my spine. She fought not for fame, not for glory, but for truth. Yet tragically, that truth was obscured by gender biases, towering egos, and a world unready to acknowledge a woman like her. I sit here under the dim glow of a lamp, flipping through pages about Rosalind. A quiet shame creeps in. We who have inherited the light of her work have carelessly forgotten the woman who gave her life to ignite that flame. In the 1950s, science was a battlefield where women were rarely welcomed. Laboratories, filled with clunky equipment and grand ambitions, were the domain of men. But Rosalind stepped into that world, fearless, driven by a burning desire to understand life itself. I wonder, how could a story like this be buried? How could we let a genius like Rosalind Franklin become a faint footprint in the sands of history? Today we gather here, in this moment, to tell the story of the woman who reshaped how we see ourselves. A story not just of science, but of courage, stolen dreams, and a legacy that lives on in every cell of our being. Before we begin, I invite you to support the Obscure Minds channel with a like and a subscription. It's the fuel that keeps us bringing forgotten stories like this to light. And now, let me take you back to Rosalind's early days, where her spark of curiosity first began to blaze, launching a scientific journey of monumental impact. Rosalind Franklin was more than a scientist. She was a warrior, a trailblazer who dared to confront prejudice in pursuit of truth. Imagine a little girl, just 6 years old, sitting in the corner of a living room in Notting Hill, London, meticulously taking apart a toy clock. Not to destroy it, but to explore. How does it work, she wondered, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. That was Rosalind Franklin, born on July 25, 1920, into a Jewish family steeped in academic tradition. Her mother, Muriel, once wrote in her diary, "Rosalind doesn't play like other children, she builds entire worlds from her questions." Her father, Ellis Franklin, a conservative banker, believed a woman's path should be confined to the kitchen or the parlor. But Rosalind, even as a child, carried a different flame, a flame of discovery that nothing could extinguish. At 12, during a family dinner, Rosalind stood up and declared, "I want to be a scientist." The room fell silent. Her father laughed, thinking it a childish whim, but Rosalind was serious. At St. Paul's Girls' School, she quickly became a star. She topped her class in math, physics, and chemistry, astonishing teachers with questions that went far beyond textbooks. One teacher wrote in a report, "Rosalind Franklin has a rare analytical mind. She doesn't study to memorize, but to understand deeply." Can you imagine it? A young girl in a world bound by rigid expectations for women, daring to question the very nature of existence. In 1938, at 18, Rosalind earned a place at Newnham College, Cambridge, one of England's most prestigious universities, majoring in chemistry. But Cambridge in those days was no easy place for women. In vast lecture halls filled with the brightest minds in Britain, Rosalind was one of the few female students, often sitting alone, scribbling notes meticulously, while her male peers joked that women don't belong in science. But she didn't let their taunts deter her. She fell in love with crystallography, a nascent field where scientists used X-rays to capture the structure of molecules, as if sketching the blueprint of life itself. I picture her in a dimly lit lab, adjusting an X-ray machine with laser-like focus, like an artist crafting a masterpiece. After graduating in 1941, amid the devastation of World War II, Rosalind moved to Paris to work in the lab of Jacques Meringue, a renowned crystallographer. There, she didn't just learn to take X-ray images, she honed her ability to analyze the hazy films that held the secrets of molecules. A colleague in Paris wrote in a letter, "Rosalind reads X-ray films like poetry. She sees what we could never see." Those years in Paris were Rosalind's golden era. Surrounded by passionate scientists, free from the gender biases of England, she became a master crystallographer. I can see her in a white lab coat, standing before an X-ray machine, a faint smile on her face as she unravels a new molecular structure. In 1951, Rosalind returned to London, armed with her Paris expertise, to join King's College and dive into the race to decode DNA, the mysterious molecule believed to hold the key to life. At the time, DNA was science's greatest puzzle. Researchers knew it carried genetic information, but its structure, how it stored and transmitted life's secrets, remained a mystery. Rosalind, with her unmatched crystallographic skills, was tasked with taking X-ray images of DNA. She threw herself into the work with astonishing dedication, often staying in the lab until midnight, tweaking equipment, analyzing every film. Each film was a challenge, requiring hours of exposure to hazardous X-rays, but Rosalind never wavered. After over a year of relentless effort, in May 1952, the defining moment arrived. Rosalind captured Photo 51, an X-ray image revealing the double helix structure of DNA, clear as a perfect painting. I can picture her standing in the darkroom, holding the film up to the light, her heart racing as she realized she'd just unlocked a gateway to the secret of life. Photo 51 wasn't just a film, it was proof that DNA was a double helix, a discovery that would transform medicine, genetics, and biology forever. A colleague at King's College, upon seeing the image, exclaimed, "This is the moment science changed." But Rosalind, with her characteristic humility, simply smiled and continued her work. But the radiant light of Photo 51, sadly, would lead her into a darkness no one could have foreseen, where her dreams were violated and her genius trampled. I still remember the moment I read a line from Rosalind Franklin's diary, written on a cold winter night in 1952 at King's College, London. She wrote, "I feel like an outsider, lost amid cold stares and whispers behind my back." Those words, like a sharp blade, pierced my heart. Rosalind, the woman who captured Photo 51, the X-ray image that unveiled the secret of life, should have been celebrated as a hero. Instead, she was thrust into darkness, isolated, misunderstood, and worse, robbed of her very dreams. King's College in the early 1950s was a harsh world for women. The laboratory, with its stone walls, pungent chemical smells, and bulky X-ray machines, was a male domain. Rosalind, despite her brilliant mind and exceptional crystallographic skills, was treated as an interloper. Maurice Wilkins, the head of the DNA research project at King's, never saw her as an equal colleague. In meetings, he would interrupt her, dismiss her insights, or worse, bristle when she presented analyses so precise they were breathtaking. A male colleague at King's wrote in his memoir, "Rosalind was too good," and that made Wilkins uneasy. He didn't want to be overshadowed by a woman. Those words chill me. How could a talent like Rosalind be treated as a threat, simply because she was a woman? Every day, Rosalind entered the lab with a resolute heart, but one scarred by wounds. She worked tirelessly, often staying until the clock struck midnight, adjusting the X-ray machine with absolute precision, despite headaches from prolonged exposure to X-rays. But outside the lab, she faced cruel isolation. Her male colleagues would gather at a cafe discussing science, while Rosalind was never invited. In a letter to a close friend, she wrote, "I don't need them to like me. I just need them to respect my work." Those lines, a declaration of strength, are also a silent cry for help. I can feel her loneliness, like a weary traveler lost in a blizzard with no one to offer a hand. Then, in 1953, the true tragedy struck, a wound that would never heal in Rosalind's life. Without her permission, without a word of notice, Maurice Wilkins secretly took Photo 51, the precious X-ray image she had spent months, hundreds of grueling hours to perfect. He brought it to Cambridge and handed it to James Watson and Francis Crick, two scientists racing to crack DNA's structure. Watson, in his memoir, wrote with glee, "When I saw Photo 51, I knew we had won. That image was all we needed." But he didn't mention Rosalind, not a word of thanks, not a shred of acknowledgement. Those lines ignite a fire of outrage in me. How could they be so callous? How could they steal a woman's sweat, passion, and dreams, then climb to glory without a trace of remorse? Watson and Crick used Rosalind's data, not just Photo 51, but her precise measurements, to build their double helix model of DNA. They published their findings in Nature in April 1953, and their paper became a historic milestone, lauded worldwide. But Rosalind? She was mentioned only in passing in a secondary article as a minor contributor, nothing more. No one knew that without Photo 51, without the sleepless nights Rosalind spent analyzing every line on that film, Watson and Crick might still have been groping in the dark. I can't bear the thought, a woman who poured her heart and mind into opening the door to life itself, only to see her work stolen, her name reduced to a faint footnote in history. When she learned her data had been taken, Rosalind didn't lash out. In a letter to her sister, she wrote, "I don't want to argue. I just want to keep doing my work." That composure breaks my heart even more. How could she maintain such dignity when the world turned its back on her? How could she press forward when her dreams were so cruelly violated? But Rosalind's tragedy didn't end there. Her health began to decline, likely from years of exposure to hazardous X-rays in the lab. Silent pains, exhausting days, yet she kept working, her scientific flame still burning bright. In 1958, at just 37, Rosalind passed away from ovarian cancer, a death far too early, far too unjust for a genius. 4 years later, in 1962, Watson, Crick, and Wilkins received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for discovering DNA's structure. Rosalind was not mentioned. The Nobel isn't awarded posthumously, but I can't help but wonder, was that the only reason? Or was it because she was a woman in a male-dominated scientific world? Did prejudice rob her not only of credit, but of her rightful legacy? I sit here, poring over pages about Rosalind, and feel a pain I can't put into words. A woman who dedicated her life to truth, only to see her dreams stolen, her name erased. But Rosalind's story doesn't end in darkness, for her extraordinary resilience and undying flame wrote a chapter of inspiration that leaves us in awe. Rosalind Franklin left this world in 1958, carrying unfulfilled dreams. But the light from her work, from the X-ray image called Photo 51, still burns brightly, more radiant than ever, like a torch guiding humanity forward. I sit here, turning the pages of books about her, and feel a profound reverence, an awe I can't contain. Rosalind didn't just leave behind a scientific discovery, she left an immortal legacy, proof that even in the deepest darkness, a steadfast spirit can ignite an eternal light. Despite betrayal, despite isolation, Rosalind never let tragedy defeat her. After the Photo 51 incident, she left King's College for Birkbeck College, where she embarked on a new journey, studying the structure of viruses, tiny mysterious entities like polio, capable of unleashing devastating pandemics. I can see her, bearing the scars of her heart, her health fading, yet standing in the lab with unwavering resolve, pen in hand, jotting down every detail like a warrior who never surrenders. She worked with a dedication that left her colleagues in awe. A collaborator at Birkbeck wrote, "Rosalind worked as if each day was her last chance to change the world." Rosalind's virus research wasn't just a scientific step forward, it was a triumph of will. She used crystallography to capture the structure of viruses, producing complex X-ray images that opened doors to understanding how viruses invade and destroy cells. Her notes, preserved in the King's College archives, show she was on the verge of a breakthrough. a discovery that could have transformed how we combat infectious diseases. But what awes me most isn't just her talent, but her unbreakable spirit. In her final years, as illness tormented her, as her body weakened, Rosalind never stopped working. She wrote to a friend, "I'm not afraid of death. I'm only afraid of not having enough time to finish what I started." Those words, like a blazing fire, make me bow in reverence. How could a woman facing injustice and illness still hold such a radiant passion? Rosalind Franklin's scientific legacy lives on in every advancement of humanity. The double helix structure of DNA, which she helped reveal, is the foundation of modern biology. Today, when you take a genetic test to trace your ancestry, when doctors use DNA editing to cure cancer, or when we receive COVID-19 vaccines built on genetic research, all bear Rosalind's mark. I wonder, how could one woman with just a few short years in the lab leave such a profound impact? How could a soul battered by prejudice still illuminate the world? But Rosalind's legacy isn't confined to X-ray films or scientific papers. It lies in her story, a story of extraordinary courage, perseverance through adversity, and the cost of truth. In 2002, Brenda Maddox published Rosalind Franklin, the Dark Lady of DNA, recounting her journey with raw honesty and emotion. The book was like a thunderclap, awakening the world. Scientists, students, and the public began to ask, why wasn't Rosalind recognized? Why was her name overshadowed while Watson, Crick, and Wilkins stood on the Nobel podium? Those questions sparked a new concept, the Matilda Effect, the phenomenon where women in science are eclipsed by male colleagues. On platforms like X, posts about Effecto Matilda and Rosalind Franklin have gone viral, with thousands sharing outrage and admiration. One user wrote, "Rosalind Franklin is proof that talent isn't enough. Women have to fight twice as hard to be seen." Those words make me pause, reflect. Have we truly changed? Or are there still other Rosalinds quietly battling in the shadows? The greatest mystery Rosalind left behind lies in her final notes. In her last months, she was close to decoding the structure of the polio virus, a discovery that could have saved millions. Her pages, filled with meticulous handwriting, are a testament to a soul that never stopped yearning. Had she lived longer, had illness not taken her so soon, I believe Rosalind would have shaken the scientific world again. But even unfinished, she left an indelible legacy, not just in her research, but in her unyielding spirit, her flame of passion that never faded. Today, the world is slowly restoring Rosalind's light, though belatedly. King's College named a building after her, a silent apology. Universities worldwide offer Rosalind Franklin scholarships, inspiring young women scientists to dream big. But I still feel a gnawing regret. These honors, though meaningful, can't erase the years she was isolated, misunderstood. Rosalind once told a friend, "Science isn't a destination, it's a journey." Her journey, though shadowed, has become a beacon for us, not just in science, but in the fight for justice, for fairness, for dreams that refuse to be forgotten. And now, as Rosalind's story draws to a close, I invite you to join me in reflecting, not just to remember, but to act, to ensure her light burns forever. We've just walked together through a journey, the journey of Rosalind Franklin, the woman who illuminated the secret of life, yet was cast into the shadows of history. I sit here under the dim glow of a lamp, leafing through pages about her, and feel a deep connection, as if she's whispering to us from the past. Rosalind wasn't just a scientist, she was an emblem of courage, of perseverance, of dreams that refused to bow to injustice. But we, who inherited her legacy, let her slip into obscurity. And that, perhaps, is our greatest shame. Rosalind Franklin's legacy isn't just Photo 51, isn't just the double helix of DNA. It's a reminder that science, at its core, is a quest for truth. A quest that demands sacrifice, courage, and sometimes tears. From the past, she laid the foundation for our present. Genetic tests that save lives, DNA editing technologies, vaccines that protect humanity. But she also left a haunting question. Why do we only remember those who stand on the podium of glory, while people like Rosalind, those who quietly weave the future, are forgotten? Today, as we tell this story, we're not just restoring Rosalind's light. We're restoring justice to her, justice she deserved in her lifetime. But is that enough? Can a building named after her, a scholarship, or a book make up for the years she was isolated, her work stolen? I don't have the answer, but I believe that by sharing this story, we're doing something right, carving her name into the hearts of future generations so no one can erase her legacy again. Rosalind Franklin urges us to look further, to the future. How many other scientists, women, those pushed to the margins, are waiting to be recognized? How many stories like hers lie buried under the dust of prejudice and time? I wonder, can we change? Can we build a world where talent is celebrated, regardless of gender, origin, or circumstance? Rosalind's story is a call to action. It calls us to look back at the past, to right its wrongs. It calls us to live in the present, to honor those quietly changing the world. And it calls us to the future, to ensure no one suffers her fate. I invite you, those listening to this story, to share your thoughts. What about Rosalind Franklin moves you most? What can we do to keep icons like her from being forgotten? Leave a comment, share this video, and together, let's spread her story to every corner of the world. Thank you for joining Obscure Minds on this journey to uncover Rosalind Franklin's story. If you loved this video, please like, share, and subscribe to keep exploring the forgotten pages of scientific history. We'll meet again in the next story, where we'll continue to restore light to those who deserve it.